A couple of lessons ago, we talked about why we fail to plan effectively. And if I had to sum it up in one sentence, I would say that our default settings aren't programmed in a way that optimizes for our future self. They are programmed in a way that optimizes for our present self. Our brains have evolved into what they are now over tens of thousands of years. We all know how hard it can be to change a bad habit, and those are typically measured in a matter of days or weeks, not tens of thousands of years. When we're trying to change our defaults, we have to give ourselves some slack and realize that we're trying to adjust behavior that goes back further than we can comprehend. It's going to be tough because the reality is, if it wasn't, everyone would be in the best position possible, and there would be no need for this course. But as we've seen, that isn't close to being the case. As investors, we face a lot of obstacles. Each obstacle comes with its own set of challenges and its own requirements to overcome them, making some easier or harder than others. But what research shows us is that a key to long-term success is our relationship with our future self. Now, it might sound weird, but stick with me because it all becomes pretty clear pretty quick. On a daily basis, we are put in the position of making decisions. Typically, when we are in the process of making a decision, we are weighing how this decision will impact our present self, what pros and cons it might have on us right now, not really considering how it could impact future versions of ourselves. It's the reason why it's easier to spend money today than save money for tomorrow, or skip today's workout expecting tomorrow's you to do it instead. It makes us really good at procrastinating the important things in life, with the unrealistic expectation that, for whatever reason, future you will want to do that thing more than present you does. In my experience, if I've dreaded something today, I've dreaded it at least the same amount in the future, if not more. A big reason as to why we behave this way is because our default settings view our future self more so as a stranger than as ourself. We can never really know 100% who will be in the future, so at some level, our future self will always be a stranger to us. But if we view our lives as a collection of separate selves rather than a single constant self, we know by looking back that even though we change over time, we share a lot of similarities between selves. It can be easy to make different versions sound like completely different people by describing things like our education, our job, our main hobbies and interests, where we live, or our favorite things. But even if our describing characteristics change over time, we've likely shared core values and beliefs. For example, describing yourself while in school versus in your career related to that schooling might sound like different people, but you could have been motivated and inspired by a constant purpose throughout. Regardless of the type of person that we are or that we strive to be, we're much more likely to act in self-interested ways. This means prioritizing ourselves and those that we care about over complete strangers. So if we view our future selves as complete strangers, rather than familiar faces, we're very unlikely to make decisions that prioritize their best interests, and will instead continue to make decisions that prioritize ourselves today. The way that I like to think about this all is, imagine you buy a house, a little bit of a fixer-upper, but with the right improvements, it's a place you can see yourself living in for the rest of your life. Year after year, you slowly make improvements. Maybe you paint some rooms, change the carpet, knock down a wall, upgrade the windows, completely redo the bathrooms and kitchen, whatever it might be. With enough time and improvements, it looks like a completely different house. It's unrecognizable from the house you first bought decades ago. In spite of all these changes, we don't view this as a completely new house, just a different version of our own home. It's still located at the same address, it's still supported by the same foundation, the same walls still act as its bones, and it still contains all the memories that were made within it. Although it's going to change over time, we always view it as our own home. It always has that sense of being familiar. Research suggests that the things that most make us us is our sense of moral self, or the person that we most want to be. It's how we hope people would describe us, not by a characteristic that will change over time, but by our core values that we live by. Things like being caring, helpful, hardworking, someone to depend on, or an all-around good person. The describing characteristics of our home will change over time, but what it most represents, a safe place for ourselves, our family, and our friends, always remains. In order to bridge the gap between a complete stranger to a loved one, we need to think about our future selves as extensions of who we are today. Sure, we will change over time, but we will share a lot of things in common, and what we do share is more important than what changes. The things that we expect to remain similar are our 5 personality traits: openness to new experiences, conscientiousness, agreeability, extroversion, and neuroticism. When we feel a strong connection between our present and future self, we're much more likely to do the hard work of self-improvement. A study about procrastination showed that participants who felt more similarity and an emotional connection to their future self were least likely to delay critical tasks they set out to do. Another study found that the more similar our future self felt, the more patient participants were to wait for a bigger reward and prioritize better long-term decisions, all of which lead to better well-being and higher life satisfaction. This lesson is based largely on the book Your Future Self by UCLA professor and author Hal Hershfield. In it, he writes, "When people consider what makes them feel a sense of connection with their future versions of themselves, they naturally incorporate the idea of self-improvement. I can feel a bond with my future self, sensing that he and I are similar and share a connection, but still anticipating that I'll get better at the things that makes me me over time. I won't become a different person, just a better one." Changing our sense of connection to our future self can boost our willingness to take more action on their behalf. The closer we feel to our future self, the better we'll prepare for our future, whatever it brings. This is really important when it comes to our finances. What if our success as investors comes down to our connection to our future self? With everything else considered, this seems like a pretty manageable hurdle to overcome, especially if it only requires us to spend some time thinking about it. The decisions we make today ultimately dictate the well-being of our future selves. Another study took a photograph of each participant, digitalized it, and ran it through an age progression program. Half of participants interacted with a present self through virtual reality, while the other half interacted with a future self. The aim was to understand if interacting with a version of yourself created a bias towards them. The study showed that those who interacted with a future version of themselves allocated significantly more money to long-term savings than those who interacted with a present version. Similar studies show similar results. Having something as simple as an image that represents our future self can make us prioritize them more. This extends beyond our finances to exercise, healthcare, ethical behavior, and even avoiding procrastination. Visualizing future you can actually create positive change. An aging app alone can't change behavior. In order to change behavior, we need to know that our future selves exist, and we need to care about them. Keeping them top of mind creates empathy for them and can force us to live more intentionally. And that's the key. We don't want to just be going with the flow, not being aware of the decisions we're making. We want to be making decisions that align with our values and align with what matters most, whatever that is. If we're able to make decisions with our future self in mind, we'll be able to find a better balance between now and then. Balance doesn't need to be 50-50. The earlier we start, the more weight is put on the present. Maybe balance looks like 90% for today and 10% for the future. With financial planning, the best way to put this into action is to think about your ideal retirement. What goals do you have between now and then? What do you want your life to look like? And when you reach retirement, what does your dream retirement look like? What would get you excited about each and every day? When we have something to work towards and know what we're working towards, it prioritizes our future. At first, we'll make conscious decisions with our future self in mind, intentionally prioritizing them. But over time, these decisions will become automatic, with our subconscious prioritizing without us having to really think about it. Retirement or financial freedom can be a monumental task to achieve. And as we'll learn, there's a lot of things working against us, including our default settings. The more things that we can do to make it easier, the more possible it becomes to achieve. It might be hard to imagine now, but if we take the right approach, we can turn a lot of the hard work into decisions we make without even realizing it.